Good evening, Mindful Elevation Caribbean viewers. Welcome again by another Mindful Elevation discussion. Tonight, we're going to have Miss Cassia with us. As you know, we started with our series, which is all things related stress. So today, we're going to be talking about stress. And in this case, we're going to be talking about the connection between emotional eating, stress, and how that all evolved, and how Miss Cassie is either working on handling with the stress, or which tips and tools she used to be able to manage the stress that she was having and or is having. So as you know, you could always welcome to send your comments, your questions. We will always address them during the series. And of course, if you would want to be part of this, you're always welcome to let us know so you can be part of this series. So we're going to start. Good night once again, Cassie. How are you doing?
I am great. I'm so glad to be here. I'm hoping to, share this with my Facebook group, the Emotional Eating Women's Wellness Community. So I hope that our conversation tonight gives a lot of value because what I just did a poll in my Facebook group, and they told me that the number one struggle they have right now is stress eating. And I'll be honest with you, I thought that people were going to say they were just too emotionally exhausted to think about their health and wellness. I think, maybe that's me. I'm feeling a little over over the pandemic and everything. But no, stress eating. So this is such an important, timely topic that I'm really glad to be, talking about right now. So if you see me looking away for a moment, it's because I want to get this sharing with that group.
Yes,
Yeah, thank you so much for having us.
you're most welcome. Thank you for accepting the invitation. And it's always a pleasure to have people here on the show and sharing with us. And it's like you said, indeed, the pandemic, COVID, it all indeed bringing the stress a little bit more to the
Yeah.
forefront.
Yep.
And that's why indeed I wanted to do this to get different perspective from other people as well, and not only my perspective on how to handle with it or what you went through when you were going through a long period of stress. So when we're going to start, can you tell a little bit about yourself?
Yes, yes. So I'm Cassie Christopher. I'm a registered dietitian and I help women 45 and up to heal emotional eating so that they can stop obsessing over food, obsessing over their bodies, and instead use that mental energy to enjoy life, pursue the things that they want to pursue in life, travel someday when that's a thing again, right? Like whatever it is, to help women stop having to think about food so much and get to think about themselves.
Nice. And how that actually started by yourself? Let me go back to stress. I was just thinking which came first, the chicken or the egg. So maybe I have to ask you to which one was first.
The stress was definitely first for me. So my story, I had a very stressful time when I was in grad school studying nutrition. I was that type A student, a perfectionist. I wanted to be better than everyone else. I had goals I wanted to achieve, and I just didn't know how to do things at a less than perfect level, and that caused a lot of stress. And not only that, but I started this constant roller coaster of dieting where I would, try the latest diet I was learning about in school about how to be healthy. And then, I would go back to chocolate and guacamole and these things that made me feel better in the moment, and then try some of these diets again. And I really started to struggle with feeling like my food choices were either bad or good, and I was either bad or good as a result, which caused more stress. So my relationship with food was causing stress. I didn't know at the time, but all of that dieting, restrictive dieting, causes stress to our bodies as well. Not maybe psychological stress, although it definitely can, but being restricted and not getting enough nutrients you need also was causing stress. So stress was coming at me from a lot of different ways, and the way that I was dealing with it at the time was to go every day to the school cafeteria and eat a chocolate bar. And, I was like, oh, it's dark chocolate. It's healthy for you. There's nothing wrong with this, right? Or I'd go to Whole Foods, which was across from this place that I was working at the time, and I'd buy a container of guacamole and a bag of chips, and I'd eat the whole thing. I mean, that is so filling, right? But it made me feel good, and I would eat. But the funny thing is, so that is what I consider emotional eating, when you're eating to numb your feelings, or you're eating to, feel better or kind of zone out, right? All of those ways you eat are emotional eating. You're eating because of the emotion. And what I didn't realize at the time was that I was actually emotionally eating. I thought that I had a willpower problem or a self-control problem. Like, I thought there was just something wrong with me, that I couldn't follow all of these diets I was learning about in school. And like that perfectionism associated with the trying to eat perfectly, and the self-criticism for never doing it good enough, and on top of all of that, not a lot of self-care. I was really devoting all my time and energy to my studies, left me a pretty stressed out mess, if I could be perfectly honest. And for me, it actually culminated in a panic attack, where one night, terrifyingly, I woke up in the middle of the bedroom that I share with my husband, and I'm standing up. Like, I woke up standing. I cannot tell you what a freaky experience that is. I woke up while standing in the middle of my bedroom screaming. So I came to standing and screaming, and my heart was going a million miles an hour. I felt like someone was trying to murder me, and then my husband tries to calm me down by like touching me, which only makes it worse because you feel so unsafe in that moment. And I didn't sleep for the rest of the night because I was so keyed up. My nervous system was just out of this world, activated. And that was leading to the eating. It was leading to eating as a coping strategy. And there was so much about my life at the time that was leading to being more stressed as well.
Yes, it's a lot of things indeed that led to that. When did you actually realize that stress was causing you to eat like that?
Yeah. Which is like, I love that you asked that question. I'm like, this gal, she knows what she's doing with interviewing. That's such an interesting question, because you're right. It wasn't in the moment. Like, I didn't know when I was struggling, like, oh, I have an emotional eating problem. When I was in school, I just thought there was something wrong with me. I thought I had no willpower. I had no self-control, right? Like, I blamed myself. But to realize, no, like, food's serving a broader purpose. That wasn't until actually I became a mom. And, so I have this baby, and I'm, doing everything I can to keep her alive. And some sort of switch flipped in me, where I just stopped caring for myself and like completely devoted all of my time and attention to this baby. So again, another period in life where I didn't have a lot of self-care. When I'm saying self-care, I mean like making sure I'm sleeping, like having time to do things I enjoy, like these kind of things that help keep our nervous system calm. I wasn't doing any of that. And what I was doing instead was using Ritz crackers and cheddar cheese, again, to cope with the difficulty of being a new mom, which is like one of the hardest experiences in my life. It was also very stressful because 2.5 days back from maternity leave, I lost my job. So now there's financial stressors involved. The company I worked for shut down. And, a lot of other things happening in that time frame to add to the stress. I'm using food to cope. And I ended up in a lot of pain. Like my body was in pain. And I said, like, this isn't working. I went to my doctor, discovered I had a lot of inflammation. As a dietitian, I know how I'm eating contributes to that inflammation. I knew what I was eating. I knew that it wasn't helping, right? And I decided, like, I have to figure this out. But I knew already from my experience in grad school and trying all those diets that dieting isn't the answer, because that just hurt my body more. That made it harder to be consistent. But addressing the stress had to be part of it, right? And caring for myself. Like, I had some ideas about what I might need to do, and so I went from there to try to figure it out.
Okay. And then you were saying at one point that when you were in college or you were studying,
Mm-hmm.
you were someone that really wants to be a perfectionist. Everything had to be perfect, and you kept on going till you knew that this is how you wanted the things to be.
Yeah.
Um, how actually that started, or no, let's say that, was it during that whole time, were you, at now hindsight we know it's emotional eating,
Right.
but was it from the beginning? Did you know, or did you realize that, okay, every time when I need to hand in a project, or I need to finish something and I want to have it perfect, my brain is telling me, okay, let me go to the cafeteria for the chocolate bar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really did not have that level of awareness around what I was doing. I, again, like, I just thought there was something wrong with me. I didn't notice my eating was connected, because the thing is, when you use food to cope with your emotions, it can either help you feel better. One client described it as food as Xanax, like, you feel good, you feel comforted, it's almost like a drug, or it can help you zone out. Someone describes it like trance eating. And so what the food does is it disconnects you from what you're feeling. So sometimes it can be hard to even make that connection that you're describing, because I bet if I was aware, I would have seen it. But I wasn't even aware to that degree, to go, oh, this is this is the problem, right? I was so, and honestly, what I was taught in school was to blame the person. I mean, as bad as it sounds, it was like, oh, if you're not eating right, it's your fault. Like, you're making bad choices. You can't give up your soda or whatever, right? Like, it was to blame the person. It wasn't to look deeper and go, well, what's actually causing you to make that decision? Because we all want to care for ourselves well. We all want to live a good life. And so if we're not making the choices we want to make, there's a good reason for that. And a lot of times it can be stress, and what happens when our brain is stressed, that those primal hormones take over. And sometimes it can be really hard to be aware of that. Like you're saying, I was not aware of it back when I was doing it, that, like, oh, I seem to only want cookies the night before a test. Like, no, and I wanted cookies all the time too, right? So, yeah, I think that's a great question.
Okay. Can you indicate again what trans eating is? Because yeah, it might be a kind of like a new word, at least for us over here in the Caribbean.
I actually am not sure. That's not a term that I use. So I see that someone was saying that emotional eating is what I talk about. So yeah, emotional eating is when we're using food to numb our feelings or comfort ourselves, or maybe as a primary source of pleasure in our lives.
Yeah. And then when your daughter was born, or your baby was born, it
Yeah.
kind of like added to the stress as well. And then you said before that you already knew it was stress causing all this, and then the your baby being born kind of like made it extra, or the stress got a little bit
More.
bigger.
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
get it.
Yeah. More stress in life for sure.
Okay. And then what it is that you try to do to manage the stress when you realize that it was stress causing all what you were going through? Because at one point you said that at one point you started feeling um, body pain or pain in
Mhm.
your body.
Yeah. Yeah. So I went to my doctor to try to figure out the pain in my body situation and was diagnosed with some autoimmune issues. And so that was kind of one avenue. So I knew that's why I knew that I needed to change what I was eating, because that was going to help with the autoimmune conditions, because I have some sensitivities to things like wheat and dairy, and that unfortunately are what's in my beloved Ritz crackers and cheddar cheese. The thing that I was enjoying most days
Mhm.
to make myself feel better. But I also, the issue for me wasn't primarily stress. That's a big part of the problem, but the issue was actually not allowing myself to feel my feelings. So for me, going to counseling and working with a therapist was a big part of getting through. Like, stress was definitely a big feeling that I was trying to avoid, because I didn't want to see myself as someone who was stressed out. I wanted to see myself as someone who could handle being a new mom, just fine, or someone who could handle the rigors of grad school, or a burgeoning career just fine. But the reality was I was struggling. That was causing stress, and then I didn't want to feel that stress. So I would eat instead. But what I've found since then is, whether it be stress that we're trying to avoid with food, or boredom, or loneliness, or, even happiness, celebration, right? Like, if you numb some emotions, you numb them all. Whatever it is that you're trying to get away from, it ends up, you need to feel that feeling, because if you don't feel the feeling, then it's just going to stay with you, stay in your body. In the book Burnout by Amelia and Emily Nagasaki, they talk about completing the stress cycle. And you have to, like, feel your stress, tell your body, show your body in specific ways that you're safe, your stress is over, you're not running from a saber-toothed tiger anymore, whatever it may be.
Mhm.
um, and that's the same with all emotions. So for me, recognizing the feelings I was feeling, accepting that I was feeling them, creating a compassionate, safe space to feel them was important, because I was also dealing with a lot of self-criticism. And what would happen when I was criticizing myself is I would end up needing more food to cope with being mean to myself, because it felt bad. And that criticism caused more stress. But what's really interesting, as I've been diving more into the research around the connection between stress and emotional eating, and I certainly saw this for myself, is having stress on board, having that stress hormone cortisol, which causes the fight, flight, or freeze being activated, and your nervous system's all keyed up. These are all interchangeable words for being stressed out. I'm just saying it in different ways. um, that actually can cause some pretty intense cravings. The research shows that when cortisol is elevated, you're more likely to eat unhealthy foods. So it sets you up for having a hard time making healthy choices. And what I've found in my work with women is that when there's a lot of stress happening, whether that be, psychological stress, where we feel like, oh, I've got deadlines, I'm fighting with my husband, like whatever that psychological stress comes from, or body stress. So this is where maybe there's inflammation. I mentioned autoimmune, that can cause stress in the body, that can elevate cortisol. Maybe you are going through menopause, that can elevate cortisol. Having blood sugar imbalances or not eating regularly, all of these things can cause cortisol to be higher. And what I found happens is you end up with some pretty intense food cravings, and I see two different kinds. One is I call the cookie monster, and that's where, and I totally remember this, where you're just shoveling, food in your mouth. You're the cookie monster. You're not thinking about what you're doing. You're just doing it. And the other one I call the devil on your shoulder, like in cartoons where there's a devil on one shoulder and an angel on the other. This is where all day long you're having to just say, like, no, I don't want to eat, right? Like, this devil is always talking to you, like, oh, there's the food, go get it, it's in the pantry. country or go to the drive-through, whatever it may be. So I've found that the stress really can impact the eating choices. And after seeing that in the research and my experience with my clients, I've started to see what was really happening for me back in the past. Hmm.
Okay. um because you not because but you're helping clients, you're working with them, you went through it, so you at this point you indeed know that okay, this might be the ways that helping, and this is what I went through, this is what works for me.
Yeah.
So when the viewers listening in, they might be thinking, yes, it's nice and all, you have all this information, but
Hmm.
then if they are the ones going through it at this moment, I can
Yeah.
imagine it's very difficult, and me myself having to gone through a long period of stress. I know how it was at that time
Yeah.
now.
Hmm.
But during that time, it's like you said, it's difficult, it's not easy to, so we so to realize it's stress, to acknowledge what it is, to acknowledge what is causing it, or what stress is causing to your
Yeah.
body and your environment. In your case, you did indicate shortly that, for example, you went to a counselor
Hmm.
to go through the different things. At that moment, was it easy for you, maybe to even start with, to go to a counselor? And then even when you were at the counselor, was it easy for you to realize, or was it a long process?
Hmm.
How that was
Yeah.
going with you?
Yeah. I think the work of healing emotional eating is not easy. It's not easy at all because it's not just about yes or no eating something. Like it really has nothing to do with food. And that's why people are often surprised when I share my emotional eating roadmap, which if it's okay to share with your community, people can go to CassieChristopher.net/free and download that roadmap. And it just pinpoints and shows you exactly what it's going to take to heal emotional eating. And I think it's important to see that because oftentimes we think the answer is dieting. What I've already shared, dieting makes it worse. And we can lose hope. It's so easy to lose hope when you've been struggling for so long. If you're feeling all that stress, you're probably exhausted. It gets so exhausting, right? And it can just feel like there's no hope. But the truth is, there is a way to heal emotional eating. It doesn't involve going on a diet. And what I would want someone to know in that space is like, yes, it's difficult. Like it is hard because you have to connect back to your feelings and why you're feeling something. And you have to learn to be kind to yourself, which for most people who struggle with emotional eating is a difficult thing. And there's some even grieving involved with not being kind to yourself, right? Like that's hard to really even become aware of how mean we are to ourselves. So it's a difficult process, but what the process results in is no longer numbing your emotion. I mentioned, I think there's a great Brene Brown quote that if you numb the hard stuff, you're going to numb the good stuff too.
Mm.
So you miss out on fully feeling all of the good things when you stop yourself from feeling the bad things. And even those bad things, can bring like fruit in our lives and depth and experience. And so a lot of what I do is to help women find the courage to trust themselves around food, to connect with themselves more fully. And that's what then allows for this experience where when they get stressed out, they can say like, okay, they can be curious, why am I stressed? What's going on here? Is it a situation I can control or do something about? And if it's not, how do I feel this stress or care for myself, care for my emotions in the midst of this stress? Because sometimes there's nothing we can do about it, right? I mean, like,
Yeah.
hello,
Mhm.
global pandemic. There is nothing I can do about this.
Yeah,
My daughter doesn't
correct.
have daycare this week because, there's an outbreak in her class. There is nothing I can do about that. My only choice is to cope. And so
Mhm.
developing better coping mechanisms that actually allow you to connect deeper with yourself and other people, and bring forth life rather than just numbing and trying to avoid and get away from. I really
Mhm.
have found in my own life that doesn't bring the same level of fulfillment and happiness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. it's like you said, you have to find the root of the cause. And then before, indeed, for example, when it comes to the eating, you can handle with the eating. Otherwise, the root will still be there, and then it might show in a different way than eating to numb
Sure.
feelings. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it for, is there different trajectories for everybody, or is there kind of like a general trajectory? Because yes, we humans, we different. So I can imagine that it might be different.
Yeah. I think a healthy relationship with food where you're able to check in with yourself and know if you're hungry or what you're hungry for, and the ability to stop eating when you're full. Like, I think a healthy relationship with food where you can honor your cravings that you have for, ice cream or these foods that may seem less healthy, right? But also still enjoy vegetables and make healthy choices. I believe that is possible for everyone. I really do, and one that allows you to care for yourself in the best way. Now, the best way of caring for yourself may not be to lose 150 pounds or whatever so that you can be within a normal BMI. Maybe some weight loss, but the point is, what that best outcome may be different for different people. I think that's where the path looks different, or kind of where their healthy relationship with food takes them may be different.
Mhm.
But ultimately, I do believe that healing emotional eating, healing any disorder that you may even have in your relationship with food, is 100% possible for everyone, with the right support. Hmm.
Yeah, and that's important indeed, because that's what I was going to ask you. In your case, what was the support that you had or that you're having?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, I saw a naturopath. I saw my counselor. Different times I've worked with acupuncturists. I've had my own dietitian. Like, I'm very lucky, and to have amazing providers that I can reach out to for support. But even just friends, and being able to talk through what I'm going through and what I'm experiencing, and having those kinds of conversations that feel supportive. Like, I definitely have a tribe of people around me who've helped me get the results that I have, and that I now help my clients get as well as a dietitian. And I think that has to be the way it is. Like, I don't believe that it's possible to heal emotional eating on your own. And here's why I think that. And when I say on your own, like, it might be possible with one good friend. You know what I mean? Like, I don't necessarily mean, no, you have to work with me. Like, that's not what I'm saying.
Mhm.
Although I can help. But what I'm saying is, uh, the part about emotional eating that's so hard, and the reason that so many people don't actually get help, is because it creates a lot of shame. And shame tells us that we aren't worthy of love and connection with other people because of what we're doing. People have shame about their eating habits, they have shame about their appetites, they have shame about their bodies, their desires, right? Like, all sorts of shame. And emotional eating in particular feels very shameful to people. And shame thrives in isolation. Shame thrives when you think you're the only one and you can't tell anybody. But shame gets blown out of the water when you have a safe space, to share with other people, and you receive empathy. And so that's why I believe that emotional eating, to stop feeling shameful about your food choices and who you are, you really do need other people to shine that empathy and shine that love back on you. And you have to get rid of shame. You also have to practice self-compassion as well, and be kind to yourself, and realize, like, oh, this is a normal thing that people struggle with, and there is a solution, and it's okay. I'm not
Mhm.
wrong because I struggle with eating. So yeah, that's there is hope, but I do believe that you probably need some sort of support in order to heal emotional eating in particular.
Yeah. And then when we talking about being shame, what is maybe one concrete thing that people can do. You did indicate that talking about it, but I can imagine that even if you have your group of friends, like you said,
Mhm.
emotional eating, most of the time it's hidden.
Yes.
It's not something that you show to everybody.
Yep.
So for you to go and talk about it with the group of friends that you maybe have been having there for 10, 20 years,
Right.
spending time with, but not sharing your emotional eating, for example, how it is that you can go from not sharing and then talking about it.
Hmm. Yeah. So, the number one thing I think is to make sure that you're sharing with safe people. I think we have an idea in our hearts, about
Mhm.
someone, whether that person would be safe to talk to about things that we feel very vulnerable about. We have some friends where we can do that. We can share what's on our hearts. We have some friends where we can't. And if we need friends where we can share what's on our heart, maybe that's something to think about and look for. But also to approach the people that we think might be safe to talk to, who will be open and won't say like, oh, you have some, stupid problem, right? Like people who feel safe. You can open that conversation with some boundaries if you're feeling really unsure about it. And that might look something like, hey, I have this thing I want to talk to you about. I feel really embarrassed about it. So, I'm going to need a lot of love from you when I share this with you. I'd love to hear your experiences if you've ever struggled or you know someone who struggles. But yeah, I really need love and not criticism here. Can you provide that to me?
Mhm.
And if they're a good friend, they're going to be like, heck yes, I'm listening, share. So
Yeah.
maybe just setting some boundaries could open that conversation.
Yeah, that's a nice thing what you said about indeed the setting of the boundaries, because if I have to picture myself needing to have a conversation like that, setting the boundaries from before, it kind of like already calming me down,
Yeah, and sharing what
giving me
you
more
need, right?
confidence.
Yeah. A lot
Mhm.
of healing emotional eating is having the courage to trust yourself and the courage to trust someone else, but really to trust yourself that you know what you need. So you're, checking in with what you need, and then you're setting that expectation. You're asking for it when you're sharing your boundaries. So it's a
Mhm.
courageous thing. I mean, this conversation, listening to us have this conversation is courageous. And if you're out there struggling with emotional eating, like you might feel uncomfortable right now because that we're talking about a lot of really hard things, the stress, the
Mhm.
shame, and the eating and feeling out of control. And yeah, I just want to acknowledge that if someone's listening and you're struggling, like it takes a lot of courage to even listen to the conversation, but certainly to trust yourself enough to ask for help, whether that be from someone like me or just from a friend.
Yeah, indeed. I'm just curious to know what an we used to call it a nature pad is. I mean, I
Mhm.
have an idea, but
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. It's someone who's gone to medical school, but it's not like an accredited normal medical school where they have an MD after their name. They have an ND after their name, and is a naturopath. And so they use more like alternative therapies. I'm kind of a weirdo, so I'm totally into that. But yeah, so that's kind of my chosen path when it comes to getting
Mhm.
medical care.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, and the emotional eating, you indicated that once you have your support group, you put in time to work on what you need to work on, you will be able to handle with it, cure from it. And that, of course, depends again from person to person, right? Because it depends as well what type of food you're using as emotion to for that emotional eating, or it doesn't really matter. Besides the fact that you have to go to the root of the problem, I understand that, but
Sure. Yeah, no, I think the journey certainly looks different for everyone. You know, the actual emotions that you might be avoiding, or the things that, cause your nervous system to get all excited and out of balance, or trigger, you feeling bad. Like, all of those things are different from person to person, but the same basic formula that I lay out in that emotional eating roadmap I mentioned at CassieChristopher.net/free, folks can get it if you'd like. That same basic formula works for pretty much anyone. Like, I really haven't found a person who it doesn't work for. And that formula is to first work on calming your nervous system, so lowering the stress, or handling your resilience, becoming more resilient to stress. That's really important for healing emotional eating. The second piece of that is watching your thoughts, the self-criticism, the all or nothing thinking that tells you you're a failure if you don't do something perfectly. And then checking in with your emotions. So this is where we really work on self-compassion and becoming nicer to yourself, because self-compassion actually makes it safe to feel your emotion. If you're not nice to yourself, it's not safe to try to feel, boredom or stress or whatever it may be. Like, you're just going to kick yourself while you're down. And then lastly, really thinking about your purpose and the pleasure that you want to get out of life, because a lot of people use food as a primary source of pleasure. So finding pleasure in things outside of just food is another way to help yourself continue using food, to nourish, rather than for all these other reasons that we've just talked about in this conversation.
okay. So because, for example, I just love ice cream. I
Uh-huh.
can eat it. To be honest, I can eat it every day.
Awesome. Ice cream's delicious.
But then, do I have to go and check with myself to see if that is some form of maybe numbing some feelings, or can I just be happy that I love ice cream, and as long as it doesn't harm my health, I can
Yeah.
continue eating it?
Yeah, I think the question, so here's the thing, whether or not that's emotional eating, some degree of emotional eating is normal for all of us. Like, all the TV sitcoms, when somebody gets in a breakup, they eat like a pint of ice cream with their girlfriends all around them. Like, it's normal to emotionally eat. Break up with
Mhm.
someone, eat a pint of Ben and Jerry's. Like, they go together. The Ben and Jerry's works. It makes you feel better.
Yeah, correct.
And so recognizing that emotional eating is normal, it's not a problem until it becomes a problem. Until, if you ever felt like, I can't stop doing this, I can't say no to it, I'm thinking about it and trying to resist it all day long, and it's kind of taking my mental energy away that I would like to
Mhm.
be devoting to other things. Or if it does start to impact your health, I work with a lot of women who have diabetes, and they just feel so frustrated that they want to eat well for their health, and yet they're in the ice cream every night, whatever it may be, and they know that's not best for them. So
Mhm.
so really, before you try to solve a problem, you have to discover, is there a problem there? Do you think it's a problem, to eat a little bit of ice cream every night? I don't think that's a problem as a dietitian. I say eat it and enjoy the heck out of it.
Mhm.
But if it's not a little bit and it becomes a problem in your life, then take a look and say, like, why am I doing this? How am I feeling before? How am I feeling after? Getting curious about what's going on. A lot of the work I do when I first talk to women is actually to help them figure out if they're emotional eating. Because, like I say, we often will blame ourselves and say, I don't have good willpower, I don't have self-control, all of these things. And yet, I never believe willpower. I don't believe willpower is a thing to think about. Like,
Mhm.
the stress hormone cortisol is so powerful. There's no willpower that can stand up to that. Like, stress is a strong force. I know you believe it, right? Like, that's what you
Yes.
devoted your life to here.
Yes.
And so thinking that our willpower is going to stand up to this, like, primitive primal hormone that's designed to keep you alive when saber-toothed tigers are running after you, right? Like,
Mhm.
um,
Yeah.
it's an unfair fight. Like willpower will never win that one. And so
Mhm.
instead, figuring out how to really calm the stress and get to a place where you're not fighting it, but rather kind of going with it, feeling it, moving through it, then you can get to a place where you're not always feeling like you're fighting willpower. I hope that makes sense.
Yes, yes, it does. It does. Um, we have been talking about several things when it comes to emotional eating and
Mhm.
the stress. Do you have any maybe tips or advice that you would want to give people?
Sure. Yeah. My first tip is just to be kind to yourself. Maybe that's all my tips. Put your hand on your heart. May I be kind. Like, may we all be kind to ourselves about our eating, kind to ourselves about our stress. Stress is another area where, especially as women, we can experience a lot of shame because we believe we should have it more together. We shouldn't be feeling this way. But we live in a really stressful world. And yeah, there's things that we can do, right? Like, there's always something we can do to help our situation. We're not just victims here. And yet, like, if you're struggling right now, it's not your fault. There's a really good reason you're struggling, probably a lot of really good reasons. And if you can be kind to yourself, that's going to give you the eyes to see a solution to your problem. Because if you're focused on self criticism and you're focused on all the ways you're not measuring up, you're just going to say, it's my fault. There's nothing I can do. Throw my hands in the air. I'm a failure. Forget it. But if you can
Mm-hmm.
be kind to yourself and really look and say, what's going on here, you'll be able to really actually see solutions to some of your problems.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much for your wise word, and I appreciate it. And we got a lot of knowledge and information today from you. And it's like you said, we have to be kind to ourselves. We have to try to, even if it's the little things that we accomplish, the little things in life, we have to try to enjoy that and not be too harsh on ourselves, and
Yeah.
try to indeed focus on the today, on this moment, what it is that you're doing at this time. And yes, especially as women, of course, we do have men as well, but I think because we both working with women, so but yes,
Yeah, men have
especially
stress too, and they also
yes,
emotionally eat. Yes.
correct, correct. That's why I said you do have men as well. But because I'm a female, I can talk out of a female perspective.
Yeah.
It feels like you said, like we have a lot of on our plate, that everything we have to do,
Yeah.
we have to be everywhere to help everybody. And we mentioned it before already. Try to take care a little bit of yourself, and before you can
Mhm.
continue indeed on your path of helping everybody else.
Yeah. Awesome.
So thank you, Cassie, once more. I appreciate it, and I enjoyed it. And thank you. And like you said, if there is anybody that wants some more information and needs some assistance, they can also indeed contact you. And can you mention the where you're talking about the roadmap, and you did indicate somewhere that they can go, and then I can write it down?
Yeah, that's CassieChristopher.net/free, FREE. And that's where you can get my free roadmap. It's called You're Done Dieting, but Still Want to Heal Emotional Eating. And feel free too to tag at Cassie Christopher MSRD in the post as well. And I'd be happy to connect with anyone who needs support.
Yes, yes. Thank you. And viewers as well, thank you very much for watching. As always, if you have afterwards you're watching the recording, you have questions, you can always ask. We will pass the information to Cassie, or you can indeed tag her and she will see the question herself. So, this has been another part of all things stress related, where we were talking about the emotional eating. And then I will see everybody next time again when we're coming with another episode. So thank you and have a good night, everybody.